Next on The Kirky B Show, producer-drummer Stephen Bray.
Hey, it's Kirky B, The Kirky B Show. I'm here with the one and only Mr. Stephen Bray. Stephen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
It's
I'm
always
so
good.
happy
Always
that
good
you're
to
doing
see you.
this. What's that?
Always good to see you.
Likewise. I'm so happy you're doing this with me. I love that the technology is finally here for us to do this, because
Right.
there are so many people that know of you and so many people that don't. And so I want to be the one that gets to help disseminate your
Okay.
excellence.
All right. Sounds good.
So if you don't know who Stephen Bray is, this guy is like, let's say he's ground zero of all things 80s in the greatest of ways. And there's only one singer that we could all think of in the 80s that was groundbreaking and was ground zero, and that is Madonna. Wouldn't you say so, Stephen?
I think I would agree with that. When you first said ground zero for 80s, though, I was thinking Gary Newman. Cars. That's what jumped into my head was that.
Right.
I mean, it was just so great. And then, of course, Video Killed the Radio Star.
Right, Trevor Horn.
Kind of kicked things off. But yeah, Madonna, 80s, synonymous.
Right,
For sure.
Madonna, 80s. And for those who don't know, Stephen was right there from the very beginnings of Ms. Ciccone, Madonna. He also was the co-conspirator, co-founder of the band Breakfast Club, an amazing drummer of that band.
One small edit of that. The co-founders are actually the brothers Dan and Ed Gilroy.
Oh, okay.
And they started the band in probably 1978, 79. And Madonna was their first drummer, or one of their first drummers. Did you know that?
Not only did I know that, but now the millions of people watching now know. Wow, yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah, you could say that I actually replaced her as drummer in Breakfast Club.
Whoa, you heard it here first on the Kirky B Show. That's crazy.
Yeah, she played drums for them, and then they let her sing a couple of songs, and she kind of said, "This is cool," and said, "I think I want to sing all the time now," and started her own thing.
Right, and so then you replaced her as the drummer, and then the band Breakfast Club was born.
Well, they were already Breakfast Club, but
okay.
the band that made the album that the 1987, well, actually going back to 1984, Z Records, we made some recordings for them that never really saw light of day until now. Stuff we're working on right now. And then again in 87, but that band was Dan, Ed, myself, and Gary Burke.
Wow.
Another thing, and then of course Randy Jackson for a little while, because we lost Gary as a bass player for he kind of went another direction, and Randy hung out for a bit, and we wrote some songs together, and he's even singing on a couple of the tracks that we're kind of pulling out of the vault right now.
Okay, this is like crazy gold right now. I had no idea.
Okay, good.
Randy Jackson was the bass player in Breakfast Club for a moment.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can see a version of us in Shelley Duvall's Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme. There's this weird, obscure but brilliant Mother Goose story she told, and at one point, Mother Goose's son, played by Dan from Breakfast Club, played by Dan Gilroy, gets thrown into a dungeon, I think by Little Richard, actually. I mean, everybody's in this thing. It's crazy. Little Richard throws him into the dungeon, and in the dungeon is Randy, Dweezil Zappa, me playing the drums, and then Eddie, our guitar player, playing and sort of torturing Dan with our music. It's a crazy thing. It's called I'm sure you can YouTube it. It's called Shelley Duvall's Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme.
Wow.
Gary Shandling, Terry Garr, like I said, Little Richard, Bobby Brown, like everybody's in this thing. It's crazy.
That is crazy. That sounds like someone dropped acid on that one and came up with the concept. That's
And that's what
crazy.
and that's what it looks like. Do you remember the Del Rubio triplets?
Yes,
They
vaguely.
they open it with a song that Dan and I wrote for them. It's crazy. It's pretty nuts.
Speaking of songwriting, you have been. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Rick Knowles,
Ah,
who's also a hit maker himself, writer and producer.
huge.
And whenever we talk about you, he's always saying, "Oh God, that guy's written hits." Can we just give the audience just a taste of the songs you have written through the years thus far, Lee?
Well, I'm very proud of Express Yourself. That was, that one I'm really fond of. We also Madonna and I also did True Blue, which was one of the singles off the True Blue album. Into the Groove, people know. The Into the Groove story is funny for me because we all talk about gear, like we love to talk about expensive gear, and you got to have this microphone and that mixer and that mic pre, this compressor, that EQ. That recording is like a Ramza 8-channel, console that I had in an apartment, and we just stuck a Shure 58 into the back of into the mixer and sang to a half-inch Tascam 8-track, and that's Into the Groove. She said to me when I said that Warner Brothers needed a new version of it for a single, she said, "I'm not singing that again." And as usual, she was right. She was very, very, very often right about her instincts, and she said, "I'm not singing that again." And so that's what you hear on that. So Into the Groove was a big lesson for me of like, it doesn't matter what you have, as long as you can record it and it's not completely crap.
Yeah, and you and I have spent hours, if not days, if not years, just pondering gear, along with a bunch of our other friends. We'd have tech breakfast, which is still going,
Right.
and talk about everything technology wise. This is what you just said is just proof that if it's a great song, it's a great song, no matter what.
Yeah. If you can capture whatever it is that's good about the music, whether it's the lyric or the hook or both, the melodies, the bass line, whatever it is, I think if you can capture it. I mean, Prince is a great example of like, he just went crazy with sound. Some of the things that, some of his snare drum sounds are all over the place. Dove's Cry doesn't have a bass line. Like he said, there's no rules. And I think that was a big inspiration.
Yeah, and I loved one of his articles, him talking about gear and how he never broke open a manual. He just start turning knobs
Right,
until something sounded good.
right, right. Yeah, I think he's a living. Well, he's a brilliant example of just do what feels good. Do what feels good. And then Duke Ellington said, "If it sounds good, it is good."
That's it, right? I mean, that's
Right.
truly it. And of course you have proved that time and time again. So with Madonna, the Breakfast Club, you moving to Los Angeles and doing a plethora of other things, film, television, writing for other artists, producing other artists. Who are the other artists that you've worked with through the years after the Madonna explosion?
Well, even going before that, the person who hired me the most was Jelly Bean. Jelly Bean Benitez was a John Benitez was a DJ, is a DJ, and I was one of the first people to, sorry for all the drummers that might be watching, but I was one of the first adopters of the drum machine. And when I discovered that, because I'm not that great a drummer, I know that you
beg
say
to
that
differ, but that's another show.
you say that I can play pretty well, but when I realized what drum machines could do, I thought I need to learn how to do this. And Jelly Bean was one of the first producers who hired me a lot to do his programming, and so I was kind of surviving, probably more doing that than actually playing the drums. And so he hired me to like Saida Garrett was one of my first gigs. You know, she before she did Man in the Mirror, she had a single called Do You Want It Right Now, which is like, I think, one of the first gigs I had. And then he had me program for Joyce Kennedy. I don't know if you remember Joyce Kennedy. She was in a band called Mother's Finest, I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
like,
Mother's Finest, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that was an early collaboration with Diane Warren. It was a Diane Warren song, actually. And so that was sort of the pre-Madonna stuff. And then, then I got lucky and I started working. I did a track with Kylie Minogue. I did a track with Gladys Knight, which was pure magic, because everything that came out of her mouth was perfection. And we were saying, okay, that first take was pretty slam. And if you wanted to sing it again, just for enjoyment. Yeah. I mean, she was perfection. So that was a high point. But yeah, a lot of cool one-offs, and E.G. Daily was a fun one. There's a song called Say It, Say It that Jelly Bean actually produced. And I did a lot of remixing for him too. Like, he was the king of remixers. And I think I did drum programming on like Paul McCartney, remixes. I'm not sure which one it was. Say, 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 that's McCartney, right? Say, Say, Say. Yeah. But tons of remixes with Jelly Bean as a drum programmer. And then writing was mostly Breakfast Club, though. Writing was, my day gig was my daytime job was Madonna, and the nighttime job was Breakfast Club.
Wow. I mean, there's only one that could really speak of that, and that's you. And you were there. You were in it and doing it. And everyone went their separate ways, it seems, and into their own successes. And I know that you've gone on to do musicals.
I got drafted into music theater.
Let's talk about music theater, because it seems that is it's a medium that a lot of musicians and artists are crossing into.
Well, this might be my age talking, but I feel like when you get to be beyond the years where you are organically thinking about the things that young people write about, and when I say young, I mean people in their 20s, you're writing about what life is like in your 20s, which is a lot of partying, a lot of romance is what we used to call it. I think there's different terms for it now, but you write about romantic things and relationships and whatnot. And I think when you get older, there's only so much repeating yourself you're going to want to do, I think. And so music theater is like this wormhole into a no rules place where you're not confined by song form. You're not confined by keys. You're not confined by the length of a song. You're just confined by the rule of, am I telling you a story or not? Am I telling you about the character that's singing this particular song, or are we moving this story along from point A to point B, or from point D to point E? And if you're not, it's not going to work. And a lot of pop songwriters who make that transition learn that, the hard way, because there's no other way really to learn it. Because you kind of come from writing a song like, I didn't write this song, but I always use it as an example. Like Macarena to me is like a perfect example of a song that it just has to be hooky, right? It's just following the hook rule. I don't know what that song's about. I guess it's a dance, but all I know is I'm going to be singing along with it. But in music theater, you can't, you know, unless it's like maybe one song in the show where people are just having fun dancing and singing, maybe you get away with that. But you gotta tell story. And for me, since I love, actually, you know, my parents used to play My Fair Lady and uh, uh, Camelot and all those classic, you know, Rodgers and Hammerstein and um, Fiddler on the Roof. That was the soundtrack. They didn't play a lot of cool jazz. They played Broadway musicals. So for me, it was a natural thing to kind of go, oh, you want me to tell a story and write a song at the same time? Okay, let's do that.
So
So
for those that are watching this right now, they're going, well, what did he write? What was he a part of?
the drafted, I got drafted into The Color Purple 20, we're in 2023 now, 23 years ago. The producer came to Willis, the amazing Willis, songwriter, who sadly left us a couple years ago. He came to her and said, "Who can I get to write this Color Purple musical? It's, you know, I don't want to. I want to go to songwriters who are not necessarily of that Broadway world, because that can mean its own kind of thing. That a certain kind of style of music comes out of Broadway a lot that he didn't want." And so Brenda Russell, the amazing Brenda Russell, and Willis and I wrote, you know, couple of songs to audition, and thank God Alice Walker, who wrote the story, liked what we did, and the producers liked it, and then we kind of got on this road of, it's like a 6-year road to figuring out this, you know, how to tell the story with songs. And, you know, full circle, it's 2023. There's a movie coming out in a couple of weeks of the musical that we did back then. It was premiered on Broadway 2005.
Now, two things with this movie coming out, that they'll be featuring the music that you guys wrote.
There's not the entire show, because, you know, 2.5 hours of Broadway doesn't want to fit into, you know, a much shorter film structure. But yeah, there's a good chunk of songs from the musical that are in the film.
Fantastic. And is The Color Purple still running on Broadway or off Broadway now?
It's not running on Broadway. It's running regionally. Like you know, you might be in Baltimore and say there's a production there, or maybe Sacramento. You know, regional theaters are doing it. But I'm told that there's possibly a production in London next year, which would be amazing.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That is incredible. And so I've always heard this from my actor and actress friends of, once you're on stage, you get that bug. Was there a bug that you got in writing music for Broadway musicals?
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons I never really look back, in addition to what I was saying earlier about being older, and it feels like a great playground. It kind of opens up all the boundaries of pop music. The other thing that I really loved about it was the work ethic. You've got, like, whatever the cast size is, you know, we had a big cast in that first production of like 25 people. And to see them, like, you'll come in with a song one day and they'll learn it in a day and they'll perform it that night in a preview. And then you'll say, okay, that sucked. Let's not do that again. And write a different song, and they'll learn that the next day, and then perform that the next night in front of an audience on Broadway. And I had never been around people who were that fast and that adept and that, you know, game, you know, to try things. Like, one of our lead actors at LaChanze, the amazing LaChanze, who introduced the role of Celie in Color Purple, we wrote a song that was it just didn't, let's just say it didn't work. And she said that she wanted to, the staging was, she walked down the aisle of the theater towards the exit. She said, I wanted to get in a cab and go home. It was so she wanted to go right out onto the streets and say, taxi, back in those days. But yeah, it's just a
Incredible.
really, really fun, like synergistic amalgam of talent of all sorts coming together for this. It's like an army comes together. It's like a Little Rascals episode. If anybody's old enough to remember Little Rascals, it's like, hey, let's put on a show.
Well, it's not just a bunch of musicians and then a producer inside of a room
Right.
crammed in a box all day trying to make just music. It
Saying,
seems that
is there enough echo on that? I don't know. Should we put more echo on that drum? Should we put no, I think less echo. No, let's try a different echo. Yeah, that conversation is fun, but it's nice to be around other people too.
right, and so the strokes must be broader because it still has many steps to go further into the cast, the acting, the pacing. I mean, there's a whole thing, right? Like lighting and
It's
the
a
way
world.
it's a
Costume
world.
designers. It's like and same thing on making a film. It's like costume designers, lighting people, um, the the production designer, the working with. I got to work on the Aretha Franklin movie with Jennifer Hudson, and that was a real treat for me because not only did I get to kind of dive in and dissect classics like Ain't No Way and Respect and some of her iconic songs, like to really get into the DNA of what made those records so amazing. I also got to work with like the art department, and they're saying, well, what was the console that they recorded this on, and what were the guitars that they were playing in the studio, and what way was the Wurlitzer facing when they tracked Never Loved a Man. We were lucky to have Spooner Oldham, who actually played the original piano on that track, with us on the set. And so that was, like you say, it's just a universe of creativity coming together. It's amazing.
So I have to ask, in you being a part of that production and had grown up listening to that music, please tell me you got to play drums on at least one of those songs for that.
I did get to play.
Yes.
None of those, like Ain't No Way. We had the fantastic oh god, I'm gonna space on his name. He plays on SNL.
Sean Pelton.
Yeah, we had Sean because it was a rule we had to go to New York and do all the music. This was during COVID too, so we had to do it all remotely. But Sean and Janus from also from SNL, amazing rhythm section. And but I played on some of the church music.
Great.
Yeah. That's my speed.
That's okay. But you got to play on it. That's awesome.
4/4, medium tempo, gospel rock. That's my game.
So moving forward, what are you putting forth now into we're ending 2023 now. We just got out of this crazy upside down world. We're moving forward into 2024. We're going to have a new president, or maybe the same president. We're going into this new place now with this thing called artificial intelligence. We talked about the drum machine earlier, and I always tell people, well, that was my artificial intelligence back then. Getting into the drum industry in 1985, it was already done by a drum machine.
Right.
But now moving forward into 2024 and beyond, what do you see yourself doing, and what are you involved with?
Well, I want to keep at theater and storytelling with music. I feel that it's true. AI is going to really encroach on human creativity. There's just no question that it's going to be part of the scene. What the question is, I think, does it dominate, or do we use it as a tool? Because it's obviously an amazing tool to be able to, for actors. I'm concerned a lot about actors and singers, because it's the kind of tool where you can turn to it and say, sing it more like Mariah Carey would sing it. No, no, sing it more like Whitney Houston. No, sing it more like Katy Perry would sing it. And this technology will be able to demonstrate that for you. And you won't need to call 3 different singers who now don't have those jobs, to come in and try things out. So it's one of those, it's not exactly like if you made buggy whips and then cars came along, and they didn't need your talent anymore. I think it's far more complicated than that, and
It really is.
I don't know if we might need, the politics of it all, in terms of regulation, to say, yes, you can use this stuff, but you cannot replace everybody. I know, did you see the thing the other day that somebody posted? This is, I'm an AI and I wrote this song and I'm going to sing it for you. Did you see that thing? It was not good.
It was not good. And
It was not
very
good.
depressing.
So we've got a fighting chance at this point, because humans write better music and humans, do everything better than, except for maybe calculate things at the speed of light, I suppose, which apparently our brains do. We just can't get it out of our mouths that fast. But
right.
humans are far better at, certainly in the musical realm, and probably in the storytelling realm too, because we have, I can look at you and I can see, oh wow, Kurt's getting really bored, I better say something funny.
Never. We could go all day on this. Are you kidding?
but yeah, because I've played with it. I'll write something and then I'll say, how did you, how's my grammar? And I think it's great for that. It's great for saying, oh well, you're putting your quotation marks in the wrong place, and you want a semicolon here. I think for that kind of stuff, it's really useful.
Right.
I'm worried about it encroaching, because auto-tune's another great parallel, right? Because I don't know that we know what people sound like when they sing anymore.
Right.
I don't know if we know, like on a cultural, on the pop culture level, we've forgotten what honest to goodness singing, unless you go to church and you hear people sing in church, you don't know what singing sounds like. And you hear something that's real and you go, oh, that sounds terrible. That's so out of tune, or that's so pitchy or whatever. And it's not, it's just human. It's the human voice doing what it does beautifully. Right. And so I hope we don't get fooled in the same way into thinking that AI is, good because it's somehow got this perfection, sort of this weird sheen of automated perfection on it,
Right. Well, Stephen, I just want to thank you so much for joining me on the Cricket Show.
Like you say, we could go on all day, but
no, I know. I always try to keep this 30 minutes or below, only because,
right.
Again, I could go all day and it would be no problem, but I know it's a problem for a lot of people watching. Yeah. They got other things to do. They got to go on Chat GPT right now and figure out.
That's right. They got to go, hey, how's my grammar? So, well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for those who want to follow you, that want to fanboy out on you, where can they follow you on social media?
Oh, I think I'm at Maestro Bray on the socials. That's my thing. That's my handle.
And is there a website that we could follow? And
not really. I mean, I don't there's no upkeep on it, so I would just follow the Insta, as the kids say.
Insta.
I don't have a TikTok.
Okay, so you just have IG. Do you have Facebook?
I do have Facebook. I think I do.
So we'll do Insta and Facebook with you.
Insta for sure. And then we won't talk about the other thing, because that guy's so weird.
Stephen Bray, thank you so much for joining me on the Cricket Bee Show. And
you're so welcome.
I might have to do a part 2 of this, because
we can do part 2, and we'll talk about, we could talk about drummers and drum machines.
You could bet on that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Cricket Bee, we out. See ya.
Thank you.